friends, and welcome back to Ghouls Night In, the spooky chat show with your best ghoul friends. I'm Penny Snark,
And I'm Midge Munster.
and today we have another ghoul with us in the studio, the virtual studio. So some of you may know her as the godmother of Halloween. You may know her from her Halloween blog, her amazing zines, and a mysterious upcoming project that will have dropped by the time this podcast comes out. Please welcome Spooky Little Halloween, our friend Miranda.
Hello, ghouls. Thank you so much
Woo-hoo.
for having me today.
Oh, we're so
We're
excited to
so
have you.
excited.
It's so funny being a Ghouls Night In listener. Like, I listen to the episodes and I'm like, these girls are so cool. I just want to be friends with them. And then I'm like, oh, wait, I am.
And then you remember we're not actually cool in real life.
Right.
No, you're even cooler in real life.
Do you want to give us a little introduction of your own, Miranda? Tell our listeners what you're all about if they don't already know you.
Yeah, I mean, I think you did a really good job of summing it up there. So again, I'm Miranda. I run SpookyLittleHalloween.com, a year-round Halloween blog. We are coming up on, 8 years of doing that.
Wow.
And
Wow.
as Penny mentioned, I publish quarterly zines to kind of Halloweenify the other seasons and holidays outside of spooky season. I have a full-size Halloween magazine that I do, and I can officially say this now because by the time this episode drops, it will be public. I now have a podcast of my own called Buy Pumpkins Light that I'm really excited about. I'm co-hosting that with Mike from All Hallows Geek, and every other week we're going to be chatting with people who kind of make Halloween magic on the internet and out in real life, and get the stories behind them of what they do and why they do it.
I'm so excited. Your marketing leading up to this has been so eye-catching and so
Yes.
it's got the October feels, so it's been really exciting to kind of, well, of course, knowing kind of behind the scenes what y'all are doing when everybody else doesn't know. I'm like, oh, I can't wait for y'all to find out.
Yes, we're so excited to have you and Mike in the podcasting family. So super excited. I hope if anyone has not already started listening, make sure you go and add that to your podcatcher right now.
Yeah, especially we get a lot of comments about people saying, oh, I'm always looking for spooky podcasts that aren't like scary. And I feel like you all are bringing that like more informative, cozy, spooky vibe without, it's for fraidy cats like us.
Definitely. I mean, that's something I appreciate what you said about kind of our marketing leading up, because just kind of those Halloween feels is something that we very much tried to capture in everything. Just kind of how we're setting up our intro and stuff to the podcast, which will be fun. But yeah, there's a lot of things branded as Halloween podcasts out there that are about horror, which is fantastic. We
Hmm.
love horror. It has its space in our community. But there's nothing that's like super outright Halloween that's lasted more than a couple of years. So
Mhm.
I don't know. I don't know that we're outright Halloween either necessarily, but hopefully I don't know. It'll be fun conversations about the people who make Halloween. That's really our goal.
Absolutely. We can't wait to
Mhm.
be, I mean, hopefully by this point, we're already listening.
Yes, we already love it, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'm speaking as future Midge. I love it.
But Miranda, you are not just here to talk about your upcoming projects. You are bringing your own Ghouls Night topic.
I am. I'm so excited about this. It's one of my favorite topics too. Can I share it?
Yes, please jump right
Yes,
in.
please.
It's time.
All right. So, if you are familiar with what I do online at all, you know that one of my favorite things to share are Halloween playlists. I have just over 50 now over on SpookyLittleHalloween.com. So, we're going to chat a little bit about the history of Halloween music today. So, before we do that,
Ooh.
though, I want to ask you girls two questions to get us started.
Okay.
I'm scared.
They're easy, I promise. Okay, and there's no wrong. Well, there's wrong answers maybe for the second one, but by the end of it, you'll know the right answer. Daunting, I know. Okay, so question number one for both of you: what songs do you think of when you think of Halloween music?
I mean, I'm so sorry, Miranda. Monster Mash.
Fair.
I see you apologize to Miranda where I'm the one who really should, because I'm
Oh.
going to say spooky scary
Spooky,
skeletons.
scary skeletons.
My favorite.
But also, I mean, I feel like I think of like Season of the Witch. I think of like I feel like folky music always gives me kind of a Halloween vibe. I love those kind of like Southern Gothic music vibes.
Nice.
Mm.
Okay. And then my second question for you guys, when do you think Halloween music became a thing?
Ooh.
Ooh. I mean, I think of it most prevalently happening in the late 50s and early 60s, kind of during the monster craze, but I'm sure that I will learn that I am wrong.
Yeah, I feel like that's kind of my same thought too, although now I'm like I feel like maybe there are like ancient Halloween carols that I don't know about.
Wouldn't that
Well,
be
and
lovely?
I'm sure because we're all kind of the same font of human being. Like you guys get those the playlists that come up on YouTube and it's like vintage Halloween
Yes.
for 2 hours from another room and it's like all music from at least the 20s. So it's been around at minimum that long.
Yeah, I guess I would also say it depends on what your definition of Halloween music is, which I'm sure
Yes.
Miranda will give us some guidance on.
Well, okay, and I want to say too before I delve into this, I promise I did not give them like anything ahead of time,
No, she
but
didn't.
No, that's the
part
whole
of what
premise of this podcast. We
Yeah, no
never
one
do.
knows.
We come in blind to everything always.
But part of why I wanted to kind of set the scene with those two questions is I think the way that you answered both of those is probably what most people think. I think most people
Mhm.
think
Mhm.
Monster Mash is kind of the beginning of Halloween music, and to some extent you're not wrong. And kind of that same time frame, like the late 50s, early 60s. So what I want to talk about today is kind of everything that came before Monster Mash and everything that led up to it, and then talk a little bit about the song itself. And hopefully I will not drone on for too long because I find myself getting very excited and passionate about this topic because I love
That's
music.
literally what we're here for. This is the
Yes.
podcast to drone on about a topic you're excited
Excellent.
about.
Anyway, so Buy Pumpkin's Light is now canceled. I'm going to be joining Ghouls Night In.
Third ghoul,
Sorry,
third
Mike.
ghoul.
Happy to have you.
Okay, so we're going to kind of qualify this all too as like spooky music, not necessarily outright Halloween. Because honestly, like, I mean, go look at the lyrics of Monster Mash. There's no mention of Halloween in that.
True.
Sure.
So, we're going to talk about spooky music. So, I want to go all the way back. Close your eyes and picture it, if you will, the Middle Ages of England, Scandinavia, and Germany.
I
And they
thought you were
have
going to
these
say Sicily, 1912.
further back than that. But back in the Middle Ages, there were these songs called murder ballads that were becoming
What?
popular. Are you familiar with murder ballads at all?
No.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent. So we're gonna spend a little bit of time on these. So murder ballads are essentially exactly what they sound like. They're event songs that were a narrative written about a crime that was committed. And interestingly, too, with murder ballads, these were often written by somebody in the town about the person, another person in town who had committed the crime, and then
Shady.
very. And then at various points too, I've read that the music for these songs was either handed out or even sold because we got to make a buck somehow. Sold at the we'll call them unaliving events of the person who committed the
Ooh.
murder.
Oh my god, so everybody's like singing while they're getting like hanged
Yeah,
or whatever.
and a song specifically about the crime that
About
they
how much
committed.
you suck.
Yeah.
This is very homosexual to me. Like this that is queer pettiness at its finest. I love that.
Oh, so that's kind of where we start with like the first, I don't know, we'll call it spooky adjacent songs. And that tradition is something that carries through I mean even to today, but even like 1600s, 1700s. So, jumping over to America in the 1690s. I say that date, you probably know exactly where we're going with this. This was a practice that our not so lovely Puritan friends took up
Mhm.
and wrote about everybody who they perceived to be committing witchcraft in
Mhm.
the area in the late 1600s. Also, interestingly, in the 1700s. So I feel like most music fans have probably run across Appalachian mountain music at some
Mhm.
point in
Mhm.
their journeys, their musical journeys. And I think the beautiful thing about this style of music is there's so many subgenres to it. And one of those also carried on this tradition of murder ballads. It's called graveyard music,
Ooh,
which
Ooh,
love
I think is
that.
super
promising.
fascinating. Right? And it was named that not just because of the, the topics, the subject matter for the songs, lots of death and spooky stuff, but also the haunting quality to the music. So that's something fun to seek out. So, continuing on our journey as we're seeking out spooky music, I don't know that any of this was necessarily spooky, but it definitely has strong ties to Halloween. So, I feel like that's important to point out. So, we move on to the late 1800s. Our friends, the Victorians, who were also Halloween
Yay!
lovers like us.
Those
Yes.
crazy
Woo.
Victorians.
I know we're fans of them around here, right?
Yes.
So, of course, Halloween parties were a huge thing, a very popular way for the Victorians to celebrate Halloween. And I kind of feel like during this time, everybody was kind of becoming more capitalist in nature, and music publishers definitely saw the opportunity to make a quick buck, and they were taking sheet music for a lot of classical songs that had spooky titles and repackaging it during the Halloween season so that it
Oh,
had a lot of
nice.
Halloween iconography, witches and pumpkins and everything, because you got to have music to play at a Halloween party, right?
Yes. It's
Hell
like
yeah.
music everybody already knows, but now it has a pumpkin on the front.
Basically. Well, and the interesting thing too, so like they were taking the classics, but they were also there was a lot of modern composers that were doing the same thing and like writing. I feel like this is so on brand for Victorian Halloween, but writing a lot of songs that had a lot of humor and romance in them, but with a supernatural twist.
I
Like,
love that.
Delicious.
yeah. Okay, so then we move into the early 1900s and kind of into the era that you guys were slowly going back to when I asked you kind of when do you
Mhm.
think Halloween music became a thing? And I want to stop and point out blues music from the
Mm.
1920s and 30s because there's a lot of spooky stuff that's happening throughout this. So, of course, much like rock and roll, blues music is rooted in Black culture and traditions. And as a result, you'll find blues music now and again that has a lot of lyrics about beliefs in hoodoo or voodoo mixed in, which is super fun. A couple songs that you can check out along kind of in that vein are Black Cat Bone by Lightning Hopkins, Hoodoo Lady by Memphis Minnie, and Devil Dance Blues by Sippy Wallace.
Oh, I've heard Devil Dance Blues. That's a good one.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like, there's so many. I'm barely scratching the surface with that. So
Yeah.
I will encourage you guys though, if you have never delved into this, go seek it out because this music is so beautiful. It's so interesting. The lyrics are so like, it takes you on a journey. The narratives are so interesting. I never don't enjoy listening to blues music. Never
Well,
mind
blues
spooky.
is like so heavily, I mean, all music is, but like storytelling, like, I mean,
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
really cool. Like, I feel like it always gives you a whole narrative, which I love.
For sure. So, from blues music, we jump into the 1940s. And I feel like this is the decade where you're probably going to start recognizing some of the songs that I'll mention. And then we're going to spend a lot of time in the 50s because to your guesses earlier, the 50s is really kind of where monster mania takes hold of the United States as a whole. And we see how that seeps into music. But we have to make a little pit stop in the 40s because there is something very important, two very important things that were happening in pulp culture then. Um, so, taking a step back, not from the spooky stuff, but just music at large, there was a trend in music towards novelty songs. And
Mhm.
Spike Jones and his orchestra is kind of the classic example of this. There was plenty of others, but a lot of this music was hallmarked by kind of fun, easy to sing along to lyrics, but also a lot of kind of zany sound effects that would get tossed in as well.
I love a zany sound effect.
We
They're the best.
Yes, when I was growing up, we definitely had a CD that one of my dad's friends had burned for him called 53 Funky Hits. That was like all weird novelty songs. So you're speaking to my childhood, Miranda.
Yes, I love that. So, kind of the popularity of novelty music, we see that, obviously Monster Mash is a novelty song. So we kind of see that thread through popular music going into the 50s and 60s and even today, honestly, we still have them. But another thing that I think is important to note that was happening in the late 40s is science fiction was sort of having a moment in pop culture. There was a lot of love for UFOs and aliens and kind of outer space at that time. Of course, War of the Worlds came out in 1938, so I feel like that probably had a lot of influence over this decade. And then just everything coming after it. And I will say too, I don't know about you guys, I don't consider aliens like Halloween fodder. They're mysterious, but they're not spooky. So again, this
Yeah.
is adjacent.
Mhm.
It's not
Yeah.
Halloweeny in nature.
It's that same thing where we're blending the lines of Halloween and horror. Like it's because there's so much horror slash sci-fi about aliens, I feel like they do get lumped in.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah.
So, a couple of songs to check out from this decade if you're interested. Two Little Men in a Flying Saucer, which you may have heard before by the incomparable Ella Fitzgerald. We love her
Mhm.
voice. Another one that you're probably going to know an artist who sang this, but he wasn't the original artist. Ghost Riders in the Sky.
Mm.
Yes.
The original artist of that was a man named Stan Jones, but of course, the song you probably know the Johnny Cash version from later on.
Yep.
But this song in particular was so popular that it was covered by a ton of other artists at the time, including people like Peggy Lee, and even I'm going to call him Mr. Christmas himself, Bing Crosby.
Bing
Hey.
Crosby. Yeah.
And then one more song that I do want to mention from this decade, and I know this one will make Midge happy, is Headless Horseman by K
K
Star.
Star.
So
My
good.
girl, yeah.
So good. So we go from kind of having this little bit of a science fiction pop culture thing happening to going into the 50s, and this is really where I feel like the obsession with creature features starts and kind of spreads throughout our pop culture. Um, but there's one song before we dive a little bit deeper into that that I want to point out that I think is so much fun. It was released in 1953. It's a song called "The Thing" by Phil Harris. Have either of you heard this one before?
I don't think so.
I don't recognize it by title.
Okay, so it is available on Spotify. I'm sure you could go seek it out on YouTube, etc. But it's a really fun little song. Again, not spooky in nature, but it definitely kind of creates a lot of mystery as we go through the song. So the basic premise of the lyrics is the protagonist discovers this box on a beach and he opens it up and he discovers the thing inside, and then he spends the rest of the song trying to get rid of the thing.
Mm.
And the thing I think that makes this song genius in particular is that the thing is never named. Instead, every time the thing is referenced in the song or like where the name should be, there's a trio of drum beats and stomps that happen, which makes it a fun little novelty song to sing along to. Like those beats are really addictive when you listen to it.
That's fun. I'm kind of surprised because I mean, this is the genre. I guess you said it's not really Halloween specific though, but I have a whole playlist that I created that's just like this music from the 50s, and I'm kind of shocked that never came up in my research.
Well, and like I said, I mean, this one's kind of it's adjacent, but I think because of the mystery that surrounded the lyrics, it definitely qualifies as like early Halloween music, we'll call it.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, finding a mysterious thing in a box that you can't name and get rid of is very eldritch horror. So I think
Yeah.
I definitely would count it.
Well, and the other thing that kind of makes this song, I think, an important kind of stopping point on this journey is its popularity. So, again, this was the early 50s when it came out, and it was so popular. So many people wanted to know what the thing was that Phil Harris had to change his phone number because he was getting so many calls
Oh
constantly.
my gosh.
And then also, filmmaker Howard Hughes, ironically, had a movie coming out that same year that this song was released that was also called The Thing. And because this song was so popular, he had to change the movie title. I think it got changed to The Thing from Another World, so that it wouldn't get confused with the song.
Huh.
That's wild.
So, okay, so now I want to ask you both any guesses on what The Thing is?
Ooh.
It's never revealed in the song, but
Oh, but it was revealed outside the song.
dang, Penny, you spoiled my
I'm
my
sorry.
thing.
I'm
No, it's
sorry.
okay.
You've spoiled my thing. Is that what you
The thing.
said?
I sure did.
I'm
Uh,
gonna guess that it's like an octopus monster.
Okay.
I'm gonna guess it's something stupid, like it's because it's making, you said it makes like stomping and knocking sounds.
Well, that's what happens in the song when it's supposed to be named. That's not it could that could be the thing making those
Oh,
sounds. We
okay.
don't know.
It's like, is it just like a hammer in a box? That would be really funny. Or like a ball, like a ball and jacks, like just something really stupid where it's not actually a monster.
So this is the fun thing. Penny was spot on. The
Hey!
thing was never actually revealed. Phil Harris was supposed to go on a TV show, ironically on Christmas Eve one year, to just satiate everybody's
Yeah,
desire to know
reveal.
what the thing was. Yeah, and decided to not do it at the last minute. So to this day, as far as I
Oh,
know from my
man.
own research, we have no idea what the thing actually is.
Okay, for a minute, I thought you were gonna say that he was supposed to go and reveal this thing, and he, like, died on the way. And I
Oh.
was gonna be, "The thing got him!"
The thing, yeah, the thing doesn't want people to perceive
Yes,
it.
do not you must not know the thing.
That thing's name, Midge Munster.
Found
Do
in a
not
box
perceive me.
by a man in the
Yeah,
50s. That seems
yeah.
about right.
That's
Yeah.
actually my birth story. Yeah.
So I think that's kind of one of the fun things about this song is that it kind of like because we never found out what the actual thing was, like it just adds to the mystery of it, and it also gives you the freedom to use your own imagination to dream up whatever the thing is.
The thing.
The Thing. So go check that one out. The Thing by Phil Harris. That one's really fun.
I can't
All
wait to
right.
listen.
So should we dive into the 1950s and a little bit more on monster music
Yes.
itself?
Oh, if we have to. I
If
hate
we have
talking
to.
about
Oh,
monsters.
monsters.
So, just to kind of level set a little bit as we jump into the 50s as well. Um, so Halloween had very much become like the thing that we know it as today. There was lot more trick or treating, costumes, everything. Because of course it's been around for centuries, but it didn't always look like it does today.
Mhm.
Another important thing to note is that comics, specifically horror comics, were becoming very popular during this decade. A company called EC Comics put out a series you may be familiar with, Tales from the Crypt. Um,
Hell
they
yeah.
also
Indeed.
they also had a series called Vault of Horror. And then another very important thing was happening on these newfangled devices called television sets.
A
Any
what now?
guesses? Any guesses what that was? That was coming onto your TVs.
Well, wait, what year are we in?
I mean, just the 50s in general is when
Because
this thing.
this is when Shock Theater gets released in the late 50s.
Yes, it's
But
like I paid you to say it. I love it.
Horror host time.
yeah, it's time.
So we'll come back to that in just a minute. But the horror host phenomenon definitely had an impact on music as we go through it. So I want to look at the late 50s before we jump into Monster Mash in 1962 specifically, because there's a couple songs that I think are very important to note that led us into kind of this evolution of spooky music and getting us to like the song of Halloween. So 1956 is our first stop. I Put a Spell on You by Screamin' Jay Hawkins. Have you both heard this one
Classic.
before?
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
the
Yes.
only the best song that has ever. That's like, if I had to pick one Halloween song to listen to forever, it would probably be that. Specifically the
Excellent.
Screamin' Jay Hawkins version. I think it's so unhinged and I love it so
Yes.
It's so
much.
good.
So I think most people probably recognize this song from that party scene in the original Hocus Pocus movie, right? But I mean, I'm with you guys. I think
Is
the
this
original.
song in a movie?
What? No.
I don't think so. I think I would
Who
remember that.
who is Betty Meidler? I've never.
Also
I don't know
also an
No.
her.
excellent version, but you can't beat the Screamin' Jay Hawkins.
Mhm.
No. Well, and I think that this one is so important. And I hate that I feel like it gets so overlooked because, of course, Screamin' Jay Hawkins was a Black artist, but also Native American by adoption.
Oh.
Um, so, yeah, interesting note on him. He's a really fascinating guy.
Yes.
And as you mentioned, I think the thing about this song is like if you take it at face value and just look at the lyrics, essentially it's about a man trying to control a woman and force her to fall in love with him. Tale as old as time, right? We've all been there. And like that in and of itself is horrifying, absolutely. But I think the thing that really makes this the song that it is how it was performed. And the interesting thing with that is this originally was supposed to be a ballad and like a very, nice, slow, lovely love song. And it was recorded a couple days after Hawkins' girlfriend walked out on him, and he and his producer just got like rip roaring drunk in the studio. And this unhinged version that we have today is what came out of him that night.
It was meant to be. Yeah, it's definitely just like it's the desperation of it makes it so different from kind of like you said, like that sort of like love song ballad version. It's like no, it's like I need you.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say to me it almost turns the tables because it's almost more that he's being pulled under. Like,
Mhm.
it
Yeah,
sounds more like he's the one being possessed or entrapped in this spell, even though he's the one saying it, which is very a cool juxtaposition in the way it's delivered.
I agree. It's honestly, I'm with you guys. It's one of my favorites. And just Screamin' Jay Hawkins in general is a super fascinating dude. I probably could have done an entire, episode just on him with you guys. Maybe I'll get invited back to do that at some point.
Yeah, I would love that. He's one of my faves.
Yeah, but he's so interesting. Considered the first like shock rocker in music, and also just like a goth icon. If you know anything about his stage performance, like Twin Temple has a lot to thank him for how they
Yeah.
do stuff on stage these days.
I have to shamelessly plug my favorite Screamin' Jay Hawkins song, Little Demon.
Oh, that's a good
Mhm.
one.
Please go stream it right now. It's so good. I love it so. That's like one of my sit in my car and pump myself up songs. It's so much fun. I love it.
That's awesome. So, okay, we're going to take a turn back into the horror hosts now. So I know that you guys have a whole episode on this, correct? If I'm
We
remembering right.
do.
We do.
Yes.
Yeah.
So one of the things that kind of surrounded the phenomenon of the horror host was a lot of them had tribute songs written about them. And that's kind of where this next guy enters the picture as far as Halloween music is concerned. So, because he actually made the crossover from being a horror host into also being a musical artist, that would be John Zachary out of
Yeah.
Philadelphia. So his horror host name was Roland, and he also had a song. Somebody who wrote a song about him. Um, and he was a World War II veteran turned into a struggling actor, just kind of couldn't find like a gig, a solid gig, beyond like 1 or 2 days until he landed his hosting gig. And he was so popular and just so good with his like comedic timing that within the first couple of months of being put on TV, he was pulling 13,000 teens into the studio to watch his performances be recorded, which
Damn.
I find, and in the dead of
Amazing.
winter, no less, in Philadelphia, which I find fascinating. Um, but because of his popularity, there was a local record label in Philadelphia that said, "Hey, let's capitalize on this. Want to record a song?" So he ended up recording this song called "Dinner with Drac." And the thing about John Zachary is a
That he
singer he
couldn't
is
really
not.
sing. Yeah. Yeah. Yep.
He speak sings a lot of his songs, but honestly, I think that kind of adds to the charm of them. So, and there's quite a bit out
Well, and
there.
he like set a trend base accidentally by
Yeah,
doing that. Yeah.
yeah. So, and I think the beautiful thing about Dinner with Drac is that it very quickly became popular, so popular that it wound up hitting the top 10. It broke in and ended at number 8. And this was in 1958. And there was another gentleman out there shaking his hips that was very popular at this time by the name of Elvis. I don't know, maybe you've heard of him. Um,
Elvis? No, I don't.
Elvis? No. So I find it fascinating that this song was so popular that it was, I mean, spooky music was out there competing with Elvis when he was just getting
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
started.
wild.
So, and
that's
also
crazy.
Zachary was also invited to perform on American Bandstand. So, all those squeaky, clean cut kids were listening to Dinner with Drac.
Now, I don't know if you know this. Did he perform it as Roland or did he perform it as himself?
I
I
don't
want to know.
remember.
I'm just picturing him in full like ghoul makeup on
On American
American
Bandstand.
Bandstand, and that's so
Oh,
funny to me.
Wouldn't that be
that'd be
great?
so
Also, thank
good.
you for correcting me on the pronunciation of his name.
Roland,
Roland.
yes.
Um, so the last interesting thing that I want to share about this song is that it actually ended up getting banned on radio across the country for its graphic lyrics. And I will say in 2000, what year are we in? 2023. I don't even know anymore.
2012, I'm pretty sure, yeah.
Time is a social construct. um, I might agree with the line that they banned it for because every time I hear it, there's a little bit of ooh, that's gross.
Oh,
Um, but the line about veins of a mummy named Betty, and apparently when you
Eee,
put ketchup on them, they taste very
it tastes
much
like
like spaghetti.
spaghetti. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, it's
whatevs.
a little squeamish.
Just a bit. So that got him banned from radio. That in and of itself is a really fascinating story, and I'm gonna, if I can, shamelessly plug a book that I really enjoy called Graveyard Groove. If you want to know more about that
Yes.
story, Graveyard Groove has the whole every last little twist and turn. It's absolutely fascinating. So
Yeah, you recommended that book to me like what maybe a year ago now, and it's I need to read it. I literally have it, and I was so enthralled by your like pitch of it. And then it's sitting on my TBR still, but
Now's the
I
time,
want to read
Midge.
that so badly. I know. I'm gonna go read it right now. Bye, guys.
Goodbye. We'll finish up here.
Yeah.
No, it honestly, like, that's probably one of my favorite things I've discovered since doing Spooky Little Halloween. So I tell everybody to go read it. Honestly, that's where a lot of this knowledge came from as well. So, okay, we'll wrap up with Zachary. So he did, after that song, because of its popularity, he released a full album called Spook Along with Zachary. And then, interestingly, and we're going to come back to this one, he released a follow up album in 1962 called Monster Mash.
Bum bum
Hmm.
bum.
We'll come back to that. One more pit stop that we have to make in the 1950s, 1958. As much as it pains me to mention this song, you can't talk about monster music and not give credit where credit is due to The Purple People Eater by Sheb
Ah,
Wooley.
yes. Ah,
Yeah.
yes.
I was wondering if it would come up.
It is not a Halloween song in my book, but that's just me. But I feel like you have to mention it because of just the sheer popularity of the song, like absolute smash hit the summer that it came out, and just its staying power too. Like I feel like more often than not, I feel like I'm the only person on the planet who refuses to put it on a Halloween playlist, and I stand
When
by that till the day I die.
when I was a kid, we had a cassette tape that was like Halloween favorites. We listened to it every Halloween, and Purple People Eater was the second song on that cassette. And I always wanted my mom to skip it. I hated it so much. And it
Thank
came
you.
right after the Addams Family theme, which just feels like blasphemy to me. Like, how dare you take me out of this like gorgeous Halloween vibe and put me in a Purple People Eater situation? I'm not.
How dare
How
you
dare?
sully the Adams name with this?
Uh,
Exactly. We would gladly feast on those who would subdue us.
I
So I
actually
mean,
sang Purple People Eater in middle school choir. It was one of the songs that they taught us.
I
if
would pay
you
a lot of money to see a video of that.
Mm.
same, if you could see my face right now, just the jaw drop that just happened. So again, not my favorite, but I do feel like we have to give it credit because it was just such a huge hit and it's still
Yeah.
around today. A couple other songs to check out from the late 50s, The Blob by the Five Blobs, Vampira by Bobby Bear, and one of my favorites, Werewolf by the Frantics.
Yes. We also, the day we're recording this is on the anniversary of the release of the Vampira show. So
Hey.
that's
Hmm.
cute. More horror
That's
host
awesome.
stuff.
Yeah.
But Vampira, I love, that's one of my favorite, like spooky songs. It's a
That
really good one.
that one's really fun. So that all happens in the late 50s, and we're down to kind of the end of this right before Monster Mash comes out. So, kind of going into the early 60s, monster music as a concept had kind of died out a little bit. It kind of ebbs and flows now and again. And even after Monster Mash, you still see that as a trend coming and going. But basically, so monster music kind of wasn't a thing. And then in walks a man named Robert George Pickett, aka
Also known as Bobby.
Bobby.
Bobby
Bobby.
Boris.
So, and the interesting thing about him is he himself was a huge horror fan. He grew up on horror comics, some of those comics that I mentioned from the 50s, but also those classic, 30s and 40s Universal monster movies. Um, and then he was well known in his friend group for doing an impression of Boris Karloff, which he then took and spun into his musical persona. Which, if you've ever listened to Monster Mash, you probably know what I'm talking about. So he basically had this idea to record a song, use his love of monsters, but also capitalize on some of the current dance trends. So doing the mash was like, there were variations of that and just so many different dance trends in the early 60s. But he kind of wanted to combine those two concepts, and that's kind of where Monster Mash came from. He partnered with a friend, Gary Paxton, and they recorded the song and they started shopping it around to all the major labels. And absolutely every single one said, no, thank you. We're not interested in a Halloween song.
No thanks. I'll
And they were
pass.
billing it as a Halloween song too. So Gary Paxton ended up saying, you know what, whatever, I'll just release it on my own record label because he had one, pressed some of the records, started sending them out to radio stations that he was friendly with on the West and the East Coast. And that was in August. And as soon as it hit the airwaves, it was instantly a hit. Everybody was so in love with it. And it actually was so popular that Pickett and Paxton immediately started scrambling to release an entire album of monster music. So it's at this point that our friend Mr. Zachary comes back into the picture.
He says, "Hey,
I too like to mash monsters.
Yeah, so he was, as I mentioned before, he was recording an album that he ended up titling Monster Mash. That was released in 1962. And seeing the popularity of the song, he was like, you know what? I'm going to put a cover of that on my album. And then, in a total dick move, decided I'm just going to title it Monster Mash and released it. Lovely. So, as a result of that, Bobby Boris Pickett ended up having to call his album the original Monster Mash to kind of differentiate between the two.
it's a real like undercut though. I love that he was like the OG."
Right.
Yeah,
I feel like
yeah.
that's such a
Suck it,
modern like
Zachary.
Twitter move where you're like the official spooky little
The
Halloween,
real
and you're
Bobby
like,
Boris
and
Pickett.
you're always like, are you though? That makes the fact that you have to say that makes it sound like you're not.
He said X underscore the
Real
real
monster.
X Bobby Boris X Pickett underscore X. Yeah.
So, and I think like just how that all played out, like, is a tragedy in and of itself that all of a sudden, like, there's these two men basically competing over this title of Monster Mash. But I think the real, I don't know, we'll call it a tragedy. The real tragedy of Bobby Boris Pickett, dun dun dun, is that he kind of spent the rest of his musical career then trying to recapture that lightning in a bottle that he caught with
Yeah.
Monster Mash and wrote a ton of other, like, I mean, he gave us a ton of great music. So if you've never listened to anything besides Monster Mash, there's so much more out there. Go check it out.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, just never really got there. That said, I do think that Monster Mash, to me, I know Midge kind of giggled at the top of this because I have some beef with Monster Mash, but I really do feel like it is the song of Halloween. Like if we had to pick an anthem, I don't care if you don't like listening to it. I don't like listening to it all the time, but it is the song of Halloween. Like that's undeniable.
Meanwhile, I literally listened to it in my car this morning.
I mean, I no longer skip it when it comes on. I'll just say that.
It's true. I mean, people don't have to like listening to an anthem. You just have to stand there and respect it, and that's what
Yeah.
Monster Mash is.
All rise for
All rise
Monster
for
Mash.
Monster Mash. Put your hand over your heart.
Hang on, where's my Halloween flag? I'm pledging allegiance right now.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, and I do think, I mean, we all know Monster Mash now, but there's just I think part of why it has staying power is it just like it perfectly captures, I don't know, a spooky little Halloween, if you will, and
Hey.
just that like feeling of Halloween of like dressing up and going to a party and meeting all these ghoulish characters. I do think it's really interesting too to note. So obviously, Monster Mash was a huge hit in 1962 when it came out, but it charted two more times after that, both times in the summer, no less. So I think us spooky kids have always like getting the party started early.
Hell yeah.
But it charted again in 1970 and 1973, and then
Huh.
Mr. Pickett followed those up with a couple other variations on it as well. Monster Rap in 1984, and then shortly before he passed away in 2007, two last ones, Monster Slash in 2004, and then a nice little political statement to go out on, Climate Mash in 2005.
Not the climate mash.
Good for,
You know
good
what I
for
think
you,
is
dude.
you know what's interesting too, like now that you bring that up about Zachary, like the story of Monster, like in the song story with him and like Drac kind of beefing over who created the Monster Mash, because
Oh,
Drac like
meta.
says, yeah,
Yeah.
Drac says like whatever happened to my Transylvania twist, and he's like, it's the mash now. I think that's kind of funny that then Zachary came in and was like, I too am Dracula, and I made this up completely. It is mine. He predicted his own future.
Art imitates
He really
life.
kind of did.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, and that's kind of how we got to Monster Mash and, Halloween music, I think, as we'd brand it now. Of course, there is a ton that comes after that. We'll have to save that for another day because I could go on forever. But
Part
yeah, that kind of
two.
gives you,
Get in
yeah, a
the
little bit of.
comments if you want part two of Halloween music history.
Yeah. I will say too, if you have enjoyed any of this and would like to learn more, again, that book that I mentioned, Graveyard Groove by David Accord, is a fantastic resource, really kind of one of the only ones out there about Halloween music. It's available on the Big A Amazon if you want to go check it out. If you want to, find out what you're getting into, I do have a review on my site, plus an accompanying playlist of a lot of the songs, iconic songs that are mentioned. So if you go over to spookylittlehalloween.com, search Graveyard Groove, or you can just go to bit.ly/Graveyard Groove and get right to the post.
Cool, and we'll share that in our Instagram story when this goes up as well.
Awesome.
Definitely.
So yeah, that's Halloween music in a nutshell.
That was such a fun journey. I love it, Miranda. It's like, as we said at the top of the show, this is the show to gush about a niche topic of interest. And I've just been sitting here with my chin in my hands being like, wow.
Check. Mission accomplished.
I also was sitting here taking mental notes about just how well you articulated all that research, because I feel like I'm like, wow, I could be doing better at putting my thoughts into words. I was like, you really did that, girlfriend.
Well, I don't do this
She's
on
coming for our gig.
I don't like I said, buy Pumpkin's Light canceled. I'm Ghouls Night in now.
But there's not going to be 3 ghouls. She's actually taking my position here on the show.
There can only be one M ghoul, and
Yes,
it's
I was
true
literally
now.
about to say only one M name will survive. I do want to mention one thing before we start our little wrap up here, and that it is, when we're recording this, 2 days before Miranda's birthday. So if you are listening to this episode right now, even though it's past Miranda's birthday now, go to her Instagram and give her a follow at Spooky Little Halloween for a birthday follow, and wish her happy birthday in the comments of her latest post.
That's just going to keep happening for the next year, and everybody's going to be so confused.
Right. I'm going to say, Miranda, after a period of time, you're going to be like, why do people keep wishing me happy birthday? Because you won't remember that Midge said this.
Okay, yeah. If you're listening to this too far after May 2nd,
yes.
Is that when we're yes. What day is it today?
Who knows?
Then her birthday's May 2nd. Don't be wishing her birthday in July. That's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's when you wish me happy birthday. That's
exactly.
That's my
Leo
month,
season.
So everybody
queen.
Stay back.
Spoken like a true Leo.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Miranda. It was so wonderful to hear from you. As Midge just said, at Spooky Little Halloween, where else can our listeners find you?
So I am Spooky Little Halloween on most social media platforms. I've started playing with Lemonade lately, so if you're familiar with that and on there, come find me. Of course, spookylittlehalloween.com, and buy Pumpkin's Light for the brand new podcast.
Fabulous. And to all of our friends and listeners on here, definitely go give Miranda a follow. And if you would like to stick around and hear more about our podcast and what we're up to, you can find us on Instagram at Ghouls Night in Pod. And if you are enjoying the show, we would love it if you would take the time to give us a review. We always love to hear what you think, and it helps us grow our podcast. I believe Midge has one to share with us today.
I sure do. This one is from Espresso Girl 47692, and it is a 5-star review titled Highlight of the Week. Aww. I rely on... Thanks, Miranda. That's the review. Thanks, everyone. They said, I rely on podcasts to keep me company, make me laugh, and teach me something here and there. This podcast does exactly that. Listening to Penny and Midge is the highlight of my week. They're hilarious and cover so many interesting, spooky topics. If you're looking for a fun podcast that feels like a fun time with friends, this is it.
Oh,
thank you, Espresso Girl.
We appreciate it. All right. Well, With all of that said, if you are looking to find me, I am across most platforms at Penny Snark.
And you can find me all over the web at Midge Munster.
And Miranda, we hope you'll join us in saying until next time,
Goodbye.
goodbye.
I did a terrible job.